For as long as I can remember, sex has been a challenging part of my life. As men, I think we are so instinctively drawn towards sexuality. It's part of our evolutionary impulse and our drive to reproduce and to find a partner and to experience pleasure in life. And at the same time, our culture doesn't really educate us particularly well on this topic. And in fact, so much of our struggles and challenges in relationship are a result of that lack of education and the myriad of negative experiences that we have throughout our life that begin to condition our sexuality in kind of distorted, traumatic or dysfunctional ways. That's why issues like premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction are so prevalent. The majority of men will experience either one of these issues or potentially both within their lifetime. So in this video, I want to talk about why most men need some form of sexual healing and what that process actually looks like. My name's Jasper Brown and I coach men in relationships, sex, and spirituality. And over the last 5 to 10 years of my own growth and development, I've been working through my own issues around sexuality and guiding hundreds of other men to do the same. So the first thing that I want to set up and help you to understand is that sexual trauma is in fact an extremely common occurrence, and chances are that you are sexually traumatized in some way, shape or form as a man. Now, trauma might sound like a pretty strong word, and I just want to make this important distinction between like acute trauma, like sexual abuse, rape, something, being touched inappropriately or being taken advantage of sexually, and minute or micro trauma, which could be something more like, as a young boy at school, your friend pulled down your pants in front of the girl that you liked. Or one of your early relationships, you ejaculate very quickly and the girl that you were with or your partner laughed at you, or you could tell that, she was disappointed, or she talked to her friends about it and you got teased at school because of that. Or it can simply be, later in life, something that I've definitely experienced is just a lot of shame around my sexual performance and feeling like there's this need to prove my masculinity or prove my worth as a man, as a sexual partner. And because I've struggled a lot to control my sexual energy, that would lead me to feeling embarrassed when I would make love, or I felt ashamed most of the time when sex was engaged or when I felt arousal. I had a long history of porn use, and that has conditioned my sexuality in a negative way. And so sex is just a difficult topic. It's a very loaded topic. It's a very charged, emotionally charged topic. And because most men tend to be not super emotionally developed, as in we don't have a lot of sensitivity, we don't necessarily self-reflect, we're not super empathetic, and we don't understand, and we don't have a lot of emotional literacy, at least compared to women who tend to be more emotionally literate and more emotionally intelligent. And the problem there is that we, without that connection to our emotions and a deep understanding of the micro ways that we can be traumatized sexually or just in general, we actually miss what's actually going on. We miss the signs and the signals that our body is sending to us. And so in my life, in my experience, something that comes up for me around sex is stress. Sex is stressful because I've learned to associate sexual experiences and sexual activity, engaging with my partner, making love, with a lack of safety, with fear. Because so many of my early experiences around sexuality resulted in me feeling ashamed. I learned that sex was something that I had to hide. I have these visceral memories of being so curious about sexuality because I was young, going through puberty. I had this part of myself that was opening up and I wanted to explore it. I wanted to discover it. And at the same time, it was this taboo subject. It was something that I had to hide from my parents. I couldn't, people were weird about it. It was a topic that you got teased about at school. It was something that adults were very awkward around. And so I got conditioned with this belief that sex is something you had to kind of keep a secret, and it had to be done behind closed doors. It's kind of like a private thing. You don't really talk about it very much. And so I learned that my sex was something shameful, something to be hidden, And the problem with that is that as a result of that, and because I didn't have a lot of emotional awareness in the early stages of my life, whenever I would experience sexual shame or sexual micro trauma, and I've had, acute sexual trauma as well in my life, I didn't have the capacity to meet those experiences in the way that they were needed to be met at the time. Because when you experience like a deep shame connected to your arousal, like for example, you're getting intimate with a partner or with a woman, and you ejaculate very quickly, you feel embarrassed, you feel ashamed, disappointed. And what we usually do in those situations is cover it up and pretend it didn't happen, or we brush it off. We make a joke about it, we try to like downplay it, or we just keep going and try to go again. And that basically bypasses the emotional need that you have in that moment, which is to actually sit with the shame. It's to actually soothe yourself. It's to actually validate yourself with your partner, ideally with your partner. And so your nervous system gets the message, and you get the message. Your psyche, your mind gets the message that you are okay. That even though you got ashamed, even though you felt embarrassed, even though you couldn't perform, you are fundamentally safe. You're fundamentally okay. You're not broken. You're not dysfunctional. And thereby, in that process, we actually close the loop. So there's been a wound, has been opened, there's been a rupture in your nervous system's state of harmony or equilibrium or safety. And so we go into a sympathetic nervous system response, which is fight, flight, freeze. The nervous system wants to run away because there's a threat. And then we close that loop by bringing regulation, bringing safety into the system, reassuring ourselves and soothing ourselves and letting ourselves come back down so we can regulate ourselves and enter the parasympathetic state. And that's how we close the loop. And, when I look back at my life, I have thousands and thousands of moments in my life where I didn't get that. I didn't close the loop. And so there was these micro moments of trauma, of disconnection, of alienation, of shame, connected to my sexuality, which is, this beautiful part of me that I wanted to share and express and enjoy and feel pleasure. And it got associated with states of fear, shame, disgust, anger, sadness. And now in my life, I'm going back into those places and combing through my history, trying to pull up all of these moments and relive these moments where I didn't get what I needed, so that I can actually repair and close those loops and recondition my nervous system to associate sexuality with safety, with soothing, regulated, relaxed state somehow. So if you can identify yourself in this is a really powerful moment. This is a moment when you can actually recognize the truth of your history, your body, your association with sexuality. And I'm sure you've got many of your own stories and many, 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 many moments in your life when you didn't get what you needed and your sexuality got associated with negative or heavy emotional states. And so this process of sexual healing is necessary for you. It's going to allow you to gradually unwind all of that trauma and reconnect your sexuality to positive emotional states like joy and happiness and safety and pleasure. And so we're cleaning up the past. We're actually rewiring our sexual relationship to ourselves, first and foremost. And the beautiful thing about this is that relationship carries over into your other relationships, into your intimate partnership. And it's going to help you really start to relate to yourself and others sexually in a much more clear, clean, purified, natural way. And so sex will gradually over time become a less stressful experience, a less shameful, a less traumatized or trauma conditioned experience, and a more relaxed and open and enjoyable, playful, sexy, fun, fulfilling experience. So that's the aim. I hope you found this useful. This understanding has really transformed my perspective on sex and also my entire history. And so I'm going to be sharing a lot more about this journey that I'm on, reprogramming my own sexual nature and healing myself, and also the work that I do with clients. I work with hundreds of men around the world. And if this is an issue for you, if this is something that you find you've struggled with in the past, I've got heaps of other videos on this topic you might like to check out and subscribe to my channel. I've got a free resource that I've created called the Legendary Lover Blueprint, and you can find a link for that. It's completely free in the description below. And I have a men's group and an online course called the Legendary Lover, which teaches men the foundations of sexual mastery, helps them to overcome premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, so they can actually live a sexually empowered life. And if that resonates for you, you'll find the link for that in the description below as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about curing things like premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction, you might like to check out this video next to learn a lot more about the ins and outs of those processes and how you can start to heal yourself sexually even more. That's it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Yo.